Her name was Elizabeth, and from the moment Kent saw her, his life changed. She was everything he didn't know he needed, with a laugh that could break through any bad day, and eyes that seemed to know every secret he kept. He was cautious, guarded. Life had a way of teaching him to keep his distance. But Elizabeth? She had a way of making him forget every reason he'd ever had to hide. They met in the middle of one of those endless Manila downpours. The streets were flooded, people hurried by, umbrellas bumping into each other in a mess of colors. And there she was, trying to balance a stack of books with one hand and an umbrella with the other. She looked up, their eyes met, and he knew right then and there that he'd found something rare. He offered her his umbrella, and she laughed, a sound that made him feel like everything would be okay. From that moment, they were inseparable. Long walks at night, talking until the sun rose, making coffee together in the quiet of the morning. They'd make up stories about the people around them. She'd nudge him, point to someone across the cafe and whisper, "That guy over there? Secret spy for sure." And he'd believe her every time just to see her smile. Kent loved her more than he ever thought possible. She wasn't just his girlfriend. She was his best friend, his reason for every tomorrow. But as deeply as he loved her, something always lingered in the back of his mind. He couldn't shake the feeling that their time together was temporary, like she was only borrowing space in his life. One night, Kent woke up to find her sitting at the edge of their bed, staring out the window, lost in thought. "What's wrong?" he asked, reaching out to touch her shoulder. She turned to him, her eyes heavy, and said something that still echoes in his mind. "I wish I could stay forever." Kent laughed it off, pulling her back into his arms. "What are you talking about? We have all the time in the world," he whispered. But the sadness in her eyes didn't fade. She kissed him with a kind of desperation, like she was trying to memorize him, to hold on to him in a way he couldn't understand. Over the next few weeks, she grew distant. She'd disappear for hours, saying she was going for a walk, but every time she returned, her face looked older, more worn. He asked her about it, begged her to tell him what was wrong, but she just shook her head, saying, "Some things can't be explained." One night, Kent couldn't take it anymore, so he followed her. She slipped out around midnight, her footsteps light as if she was afraid to wake the world. She made her way down to an old, crumbling chapel they'd passed 100 times but never entered. He watched from a distance as she knelt, her head bowed, her shoulders trembling. She was praying, but for what? He felt a strange chill crawl up his spine, like he was witnessing something he shouldn't. The next morning, Kent confronted her. "Elizabeth, what's going on? Why are you always disappearing?" She just looked at him, her face a mixture of love and regret. "If I could stay, I would. Believe me," she whispered. "But I can't." Kent was furious, frustrated, helpless. Elizabeth left that night without another word. He searched everywhere, drove for hours, calling her name into the silence, but she was gone. Days turned into weeks, and there was still no sign of her. He couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. Every sound, every shadow reminded him of her. His life became a hollow shell without her warmth, her laughter. He went back to the chapel where he'd last seen her, desperate for answers, for anything. And that's when he saw it, her name engraved on a plaque near the altar, dated 3 years before they ever met. It was impossible, but there it was. Elizabeth Miranda, 1999 to 2021. Kent's mind reeled. He couldn't believe it, could never believe it. She was gone. But she had been real. She was here with him, holding his hand, laughing, whispering dreams into the night. He had kissed her, loved her. How could that be? In that empty chapel, the air thick and cold, had finally hit him. She hadn't just left, she'd returned to where she belonged. She was a memory, a whisper of a life cut short, somehow allowed one last dance in the world. She had loved him as fiercely as he'd loved her, but she was only borrowing time. Now every night Kent leaves his door open just a crack, hoping she'll come back even if only in dreams.
I wake up every morning, tears in my eyes. Try to remember your face before it dies. And In my dreams you whisper, but I can't make out a word. The silence is so loud in a world so absurd. Your laughter was music, now the tune is gone. I play our old records, but the feeling's wrong. Every strum of the strings brings another side, a melody of sorrow under the empty sky. Without you I'm empty, a shell of what I was. Your love was my anchor, now I'm lost because the world keeps on turning, but I'm standing still. Can't move on from the void that's impossible to fill. I visited the places where we used to go, but every shadow reminds me of what I know. That you're not here beside me to share the dawn, a painful reminder that you've forever gone. I talk to the stars and hope you hear me cry. They twinkle back sadly, as if they wonder why. How long till this heartache decides to let me be? Forever's a long time to feel this agony. Without you I'm empty, a shell of what I was. Your love was my anchor, now I'm lost because the world keeps on turning, but I'm standing still. Can't move on from the void that's impossible to fill.